Attention marketers and entrepreneurs, this is Valuetizing, the place where we talk about scaling brands worth promoting. If you're a mission-driven entrepreneur obsessed with creating, scaling, and exiting multi-million-dollar brands, this is for you. My name is Santiago Phoenix and I am a business growth consultant, online marketer, and investor. I have helped more than 107 and 8-figure founders increase profits, claim their time back, and transform the world. Now it's your turn. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to Valuetizing. My guest today is Bradley Harris, a seasoned entrepreneur and startup advisor who has started and grown 3 brands, including Good Wave, which was sold to private equity. Bradley is currently the co-founder and CEO of A-Frame Venture Studio, where he and his team invest and grow companies that have the potential to create social, environmental, and economic impact. Bradley, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Santiago. Excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm so puzzled by what you're doing because honestly, it's not something super common in which you are blending together entrepreneurship, innovation, and also social, environmental impact. Tell me a little bit where this approach was born in your story. Like, how did you first got interest in this, blending all these pieces together?
Yeah, thanks for it's a good question. So I think this all started when I was growing up, watching my mom, who was a volunteer development director at my sister Heather, who has cerebral palsy, her charity. And I just really grew up with kind of the culture of nonprofits, hearing her cold calling donors and organizing events and things like that. And so this developed when I moved out to San Diego. I was like 22, 23, moving to work for us, growing but quite small startup called Classy, later acquired by GoFundMe, specializing in impact technology. And that really just opened my eyes and really changed my whole outlook to the kind of the art of business and the fact that you could actually create impactful businesses and blending kind of nonprofit charity work with venture for-profit worlds. So later on, I was, of course, learning to code at one point. Kind of a recovering engineer. And I was always just launching and kind of testing tools. I was really excited about the early idea validation stage and kind of bundling in marketing, sales, finance, operations, just all the different pieces of the go-to-market. So I was, launching, scaling sort of smaller e-commerce businesses. And that led to my last company, Good Wave. And that was really an incredible mission. I still believe in this really strongly. Just the kind of the beauty of nature and the fact that the ocean is quite inaccessible. So I was scaling that company. 2 years ago, we ended up getting acquired in private equity, and that's when I took a step back and I really just started to think about kind of the model and what I wanted to do next. And I came together with my co-founder Amber, and we just kept coming back to this model of the venture studio sort of framework. And I know this is becoming more and more popular, this terminology. I think in recent years, there's been a lot more writing and research on it. But I'm really interested in this thesis that it should just be easier to start measurably impactful businesses. So common that I see kind of cause marketing confused with an actual impact program in for-profit businesses. And frankly, I'm 100% guilty of it myself. It's quite easy to create a business that isn't the most environmentally friendly or socially impactful on all stakeholders and kind of slap a give back model on it. And now you're a mission driven business. I'm not simplifying my experience to be that simple. But I just think, I kept coming back to like, it should be easier. It should be easier to actually measurably be impactful as a for-profit business. So really, we just pull together our networks, bringing impact technology specialists, entrepreneurs, creatives, even like specialists in health and innovation. And we really just kind of pulled our networks and sort of laid the groundwork. Now we have 14 resident advisors. We just closed on an in-house flavor lab and kind of in the final talks of in-house digital marketing resources. So all in all, we're really focused on kind of building that machine that can create ventures that have the framework to be measurably impactful socially and environmentally.
Interesting. So do you guys start
all brands from scratch, or do you sometimes acquire established businesses?
Yeah, so we're early on in this venture, and frankly, we're carving this out based on the first few portfolio companies. At first, I was actually just looking to set some of the cash aside from the last exit and start investing. And I connected with a few hundred founders, just learning about their businesses, really looking for what's the strengths and more importantly, what's the weak points that I think I could really add value in personally and through a team that I could kind of co-build. And I had a really strong connection with this one founder who just on a whim mentioned that the product turns kids' heads. And that really kind of was the aha moment where coming from, kind of family friendly outdoor rec and, outdoor industry and consumer brands, that just really was all I needed for the aha moment to make an offer to actually just buy the business and kind of invite the founder back in to co-build this. So in that particular instance, this is Mirth Water. We acquired the business 100%. So it is A-Frame Venture Studio is the sole owner. That being said, we're also discussing a few deals right now where we would come in kind of a more of a traditional venture studio stakeholder position for minority equity, where we would be investing into working capital and actually just applying all of our resources to refine the business. So that's, from creative work to operations to marketing playbooks. And if they're a little earlier on, that requires a little bit more on the early stage idea validation and refinement there. But yeah, so to answer your question shortly, it's just a mix at this point, and we're carving this out as new portcos come into our A-Frame family.
Yeah, I guess it depends on a case by case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a lot of people talking right now about what is it, entrepreneurship through acquisition. And I believe this is 100% a founder's role, just as much as you actually starting a business. So this is the idea of, coming in, acquiring a business, and really scaling it. So kind of being a refounder in that case. So there's a lot of opportunities, and frankly, venture's changing. Like before our eyes, there's tools being created, not even, the sort of AI tools, but just like Web 2 tools are being created every day to decentralize mergers and acquisitions in general. It's becoming easier and easier, and frankly, less exclusive to be able to acquire businesses, get access to that deal flow. So I just think overall it's becoming simpler due to technology. But that being said, I still love the venture creation stage. So we do have a few brands that I'm really excited about. They're in the back burner, so I'll keep them in stealth mode for now, but this kind of touches on the health industry as well.
Yeah.
Very plasticky, I'm making up that word, but very plasticky industry that frankly has other priorities, and rightfully so. But we're looking to basically reinvent something that's been time and tested for centuries in the health industry. And we'll be launching it really to kind of the community that we're building across all the brands. So folks who actually care about products and brands that are actually good for the planet, and good, not just not bad, but actually good for the planet and for all stakeholders. That's the customers, that's where you're manufacturing, that's anyone who is involved in that business, rather than just single bottom line businesses, which is just be the investors and financial stakeholders.
That's so cool. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah. A lot to share soon.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing is, for a lot of people, including me, it's very hard to come up with good products. Like I think there are very few people who are good at innovating and creating products. So in your case, because you have done this several times, do you have a process for that idea validation stage? How do you come up with ideas? How do you know if an idea is good or if it's not?
Yeah, good question. So first off, I'm coming up with ideas every day, as anyone is typically, and there is a lot of garbage out there for what I come up with. So I have a lot of tests that I do internally, even before I share it with teammates, just to kind of frankly save face more than anything else. But I like to just stick with there's processes, and that's part of our idea validation cycle. But really, one of the most tried and true processes is ask 50, 100 potential customers, ask them what they think about, and do a proper needs assessment. Um, Anyone coming from sales or consulting, should know how to run a really excellent discovery call. And yeah, it really just starts with discovery calls, not talking about the product. You have in mind, you have the solution, but what you really want to do is validate that A, people are even experiencing this problem, and B, that they're willing to pay for it. And then this sort of silent C there is, can you build it? But that's, we're building the resources to be able to build both physical products and tech products. But yeah, that's really the first validation stage for me. Talk to potential customers, validate if they even have those challenges. And then as an extension of that, later on, I think there's so many no-code tools out there today. Bubble being a great one, I'm blinking on a number of others, but there's a lot of ways that you can simply build really simple versions of what your idea is without actually hiring engineers or
Yeah.
spending hundreds of hours actually creating the product or solution. And I love meta ads. A lot of folks are critical of it, and I don't think they scale for direct to consumer businesses. They don't necessarily scale for paid ad strategies, but it's really helpful in the early idea validation cycle. So yeah, create a simple landing page. There's no code tools out there, even a microsite on Squarespace or something, and just kind of test around with messaging. And more importantly, provide copy that's actually describing the problem based on those early conversations with potential customers. And then you could even go as far as creating a whole checkout flow. And if someone gets to that buy button at the end of that, you can have a pop-up, to ask to join a wait list or to have book a one-on-one call. I love doing that. Actually building a flow and then actually having a call to action to talk to us so we can have a deeper discovery. And then you're inviting in your potential customers into your product development, which is really the best feedback loop you could ask for. And that's satisfying marketing efforts as well. So long story short, I like meta ads for really quick distribution. You can put like $500, $250 into a campaign and just quickly distribute your message out there to get potential customers.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know right now you are a mentor at Blackstone Launchpad. So, like, what do you tell your students? Do you think certain people are made to be innovators and others should maybe like think about acquiring? Because I'm kind of in that dilemma. Like, do I have what it takes to create something of my own, or should I just buy a company that's already there? Yeah, what do you tell maybe the students there?
Yeah, well, full transparency, I just started at this role, so
Yes, I know, like
about,
2 weeks,
about two
3 weeks
weeks
ago.
in.
Okay,
Yeah.
but what would you tell them?
Yeah, yeah. Often, I mean, so far the experience has been phenomenal. It's just to, you know, for the connections alone, even gain access to this incredible talent pool of early, kind of first or second venture founders. And, I'm not like some seasoned, I don't consider myself a 10x founder who's got it all figured out. Like I'm still learning every single time I connect with our mentee and the rest of the program. But basically, I think anyone could be a founder. And I think, like I was mentioning before, the tools to access entrepreneurship is changing significantly. I think education is becoming more and more decentralized due to technology and et cetera. So long story short, I mean, there's so many tools today, even when I went through my entrepreneurship minor in college, I mean, I didn't have anything relative to what I see accessible. There's essentially accelerators, startup accelerators on at least University of California's campuses today. And it's phenomenal. I mean, we had a few courses, which was really helpful to get kind of the gears turning, but we didn't even have these types of tools. And so, yeah, I think anyone could be a founder and access and tools are changing. But B, I think there's like a whole realm of entrepreneurship within organizations too, and that shouldn't be overlooked. There's really incredible leaders and entrepreneurs inside of organizations who are asking questions and not taking no for an answer and actually looking to actually really significantly impact the business and who are really closely aligned to the stakeholders of the business. I mean, that's like a whole nother form of entrepreneurship. Um, but yeah, I feel like it takes a person who's willing to take an incredible amount of rejection. And that's really the last part. It's sometimes I ask myself, like, why am I in this? Why don't I just simplify things? And I'm always revisiting that. Um, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, I was frankly never really satisfied in my career until I got to work for myself. And um, a few folks close to me had mentioned, like, you work too hard to work for a company. You really should consider this. So I took it seriously, and it took like years, nights and weekends. It took shifting priorities. I didn't have a family. I mean, I had the time to be able to say no to some surfing and volleyball in San Diego and, work on a business idea at night, go to a coffee shop. Um, but yeah, like that was a bit of a long story, but the shorter version of that is tools are changing and anyone could be an entrepreneur, but you have to accept an incredible amount of rejection, and it's not for everyone, but once you do know that you have that itch, I think it's insatiable and you can't ignore it.
Yeah. And I think also that like the economic system will have to catch up with this new model because I know a person who she's trying to launch a sustainable skincare brand, and she's just one of many examples. And her idea is great because it's kind of using the waste of food production, and she wants to turn it into these sustainable skincare products. Um, but it's been hard because it's a new idea and a lot of like the maybe the market is more focused only on price, and I don't know. How do you deal maybe with that those initial stages where you're not sure if is this a good idea, will it sell, will it not, should I persevere with on this path or should I change path?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing more about this. It could actually be a fit if they're open to a conversation.
Okay.
But I think it comes in sort of co-developing a better early idea validation cycle. So a lot of accelerators teach the tools that kind of I was referencing with, okay, throw up a microsite, throw some ads at it, talk to a bunch of potential customers, et cetera. But not a lot of people teach adding impact evaluation into that earliest stage because, at least from my experience, a lot of incredible mentors and seasoned entrepreneurs close to me have recommended focus on the business first. And then once you're sustainable, profitable, then you can build your impact strategy. That's where the give back models come in. And I'm not knocking that, but there's better ways to do it. And actually, I think tomorrow's consumer sees right past that. 70% of consumers I'm a millennial, from Gen Z prefer to buy from brands that are actually aligned with their values. And this is up from, I believe, 36 or 35% from the previous generation as millennials. I mean, that's a 2x increase. Where is that going? So the point is consumer demand is changing. And we don't have time to do business as normal. Like the planet's burning,
Yeah.
systems aren't equal. We don't have time to continue business as usual. You can probably get an idea of some of the entrepreneurs that I really look up to, like Yvon Chouinard, et cetera, kind of use this same language. But anyways, it comes down to actually adding impact evaluation into that earliest stage. So you could have a phenomenal business. The market may look right. The forecasts might be really lucrative. The competition might be a fairly unsaturated market. But at the end of the day, if it can't pass that impact threshold of when we scale this, what's the ultimate bottom line? What's the impact on customers?
Yeah.
Then that doesn't pass our criteria. And I'm learning as I go. Again, I'm very in tune with social impact technology industry, but I had to go through a lot of growth in the early stage of starting this company because I was frankly confusing cause marketing with building an actual impact program. And so,
What do you mean by that?
yeah, I mean, we went through this exercise called a theory of change.
Mhm.
Highly recommend. I can share something with your friend, Mascara founder. But through the theory of change, we really uncovered like if we do this, if we create this product in this market, and we sell a million units, what's the future state, and what's the actual result? And so, I mean, at least for Mirthwater, the company that we acquired, I mean, there's a big sugar is dominating the future generations' diets, and that's going in the wrong direction. And if there's actually a direct relationship between how bright a packaging is and how likely it is to have an increased sugar content. So basically, kids are at the mercy of big advertising dollars, and at the same time, nonprofit donations have to compete with consumer for-profit dollars. But if you build in that a certain product is actually measurably better for people who consume it, now you can actually develop and refine your theory of change to understand when we scale and when we win, this is the end result. And honestly, that's what keeps me going. That's what gets me up early in the morning. Like, financial results are great, but that doesn't actually keep me working on weekends and keep me interested in it. So yeah, just baking in theory of change is what we use, and we're working on some tools to actually make it easier for many more brands to be able to access kind of a cost-effective way to go through that exercise, because nonprofit and I should say B Corp consultants are quite expensive, up to like $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
No startup has the budget for that. So Kurt, our incredible teammate, is in-house, and he's part of our team. He's a B Corp and sustainability consultant coming from natural foods and the outdoor industry. And he's really pushed us to kind of refine how we look at taking, for example, sugar out of a product and bringing a supply chain local. And these are specific examples, and also removing a sleeve on a can, which isn't recyclable. Many companies don't educate customers that the sleeve actually isn't recyclable. You have to take it off. And so now we're working with this new technology to actually print directly onto the can that's 100% recyclable. You don't have to go to a commercial facility for it. Now we're innovating the product, sourcing real fruit, getting away kind of from fruit extracts and natural flavors. So I mean, long story short, like we look at the impact evaluation right alongside the financial evaluation to understand if it's an opportunity worth pursuing.
So is the theory of change how you measure impact?
For us, early on, yes, but it's really more of a North Star for us to actually allow us to guide our company decisions. So if we're going through a theory of change and we're saying, future state of this business is higher accessibility to education and awareness of the connection of nutritional health to emotional well-being, then that should ultimately impact decisions in the company to use natural flavors, which has none of the actual benefits of the fruits, or real fruit juice, which does. Should also impact decisions of, do we take the sugar out and replace it with agave, things like that. But when we came into it, frankly, as a technologist, I had just assumed that aligning the right nonprofit consultants with tools would be enough to evaluate impact, because that's the direction of where commerce is going, blending values and just more impact brand aligned, or I should say value aligned decision making for purchases.
That makes my heart like sing, because I actually I work in marketing, but what I studied, I have a master's degree in sustainable development. Well, it's called local development.
Yeah.
And the idea is to use the resources of local communities in order to develop the community. But what I found is it was a lot of work with nonprofits. And what I found it was that the biggest impact could be made from the private sector. Like if companies can become more sustainable, that's going to have way more impact than even people recycling or doing these little things. If an entire industry can change, that can have the most impact. I don't know if you agree with that.
Well, I didn't know that, so I want to talk to you more about your education at some point. But I agree. There's two sides to that. It's consumer demand has to change, and then it's businesses have to change, and which comes first. And I think there's
Mm.
so many very impressive thought leaders working on the consumer side. But it's difficult because you can't scream from across the sea, come over here, this is the better way to do it. You're doing everything wrong. You shouldn't be buying these foods. You shouldn't be using these tools that sell your data, like all these types of things. And so I don't have the answer to that, but I feel like that's my life's mission. And it sounds like it's relatively close to yours as well, where impact, or I should say impact can come from the businesses themselves, not necessarily driven from consumer demand. They won't survive if the consumer demand doesn't ask for things like we don't want single-use plastics. Um, but the businesses have to change too.
Yeah.
And in the past, I think it was more lucrative to just kind of, on good years, have a nice little, write off and donate and be a charitable business and mission driven business. And again, consumer demand is changing, and especially due to increased access to transparency in businesses, I just think this is totally changing, and consumers see right past that. And 20, 30 years from now, I can't even imagine what the transparency level would be to know, what some of our favorite customers that we've been using since we were children, trying not to name drop, products that I've used when I was a kid, but I drank them, I've used them, and now I'm an adult. And I think the next generation is much more educated around this. It wasn't even a topic that I could study in undergrad. I know that much.
And when you were, what you went to study in Brazil, right?
No, I was actually teaching in Brazil. Um, so I was teaching a course on entrepreneurship and sustainability in Brazil for a summer, kind of an extended summer. But I studied
Okay.
in the U.S. in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, and yeah, I studied business with a focus of entrepreneurial management in Spanish. Um, but there really wasn't a track for sustainability. If I ever went back to school, which here and there I consider, I think this would be my focus. But again, there's so much free education out there for good reason. United Nations shares so much awesome content too. Just there's so many tools, and I think like higher ed is changing too. It's another conversation, but nowadays I don't know if you need that track, and the passion speaks for itself, and you can self-educate, but you're obviously in a completely different playing field if you do have that education. um, yeah, I'm rambling, but yeah, I studied business, and I always felt like the odd duck walking through the halls of the business school. Yeah, I never really felt like I really fit into the business school
Why? Why?
until I realized this whole new track of business, because that path goes towards management in very large corporations, and that just wasn't for me. I was just more on the startup track. But my version of startup self-education was taking free coding courses at the university, helping, working with mentors and allowing them to kind of co-build, help me build the products I had imagined, and just manually connecting with engineering students, recruiting interns. Yeah, like everything was manual. There was no accelerator program. I'm not knocking uh, my experience. I'm just saying there's so much more access to tools nowadays.
Because it seems like business people are talking about bottom line profits. Investors are focused on certain things. No, NGOs are focused on certain things, but there is not. We need more communication between them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, right. And what comes first? Um, Mission-driven brands or mission-driven people? I believe people are inherently good. Um, it's just, so you have to have that optimism, I suppose, first and foremost. And to be fair, like I could do a lot more on the consumer education side and learning and speaking and talking about these topics. But I don't know, I see this pretty clear opportunity to do this from a business perspective. There's some aisles, if you walk through a grocery store, there's some aisles that just get it. Um, I just jumped on a webinar with a cookie brand who is recreating the $12 billion cookie industry. high protein. Like this is just a whole trend, obviously, in natural foods. I'm not saying anything that I'm sure listeners don't know. But then on the other hand, you don't see the same trends necessarily in big tech and in the Metas and the Twitters with data privacy and things like that. Yeah, and the hiring and firing in the same quarter. I mean, you really have to look at different growth models. So this is getting into a new topic, but I don't think the traditional venture capital growth model makes sense for all stakeholders. For example, if you're hiring 700 employees in a quarter and the next quarter you lay off 250 or 300 employees, that's good for your bottom financial line, but how good is that for your employee stakeholders? It's a really simplified example, but I think it's so. That being said,
yeah, is that like redefining growth, or what do you mean?
no, all I'm getting at is the high velocity growth model from traditional venture capital is not necessarily serving all stakeholders. So that's just what I'm getting at. And we look at social impact. Employees are part of that equation. What's the impact of your business on people? Anyone who's impacted by your business. So that's my only point. Traditional VC kind of incentivizes growth at all costs, and a great way to increase your EBITDA, a great way to increase your bottom line is to cut costs. So often we see mass layoffs right next to mass hiring. And now I'm exploring, and this has been a process, but now I'm exploring sustainable, profitable businesses that do not fit that traditional VC model and are sometimes even boring businesses, but have sustainable models that can grow profitably. These are sometimes bootstrap businesses. These aren't always bootstrap businesses. But I think there's more creativity when you're looking at a different growth model for sustainable growth rather than high velocity growth.
So when you hear the word, do you use the word scale? Like, let's scale this company?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But the difference is when we're looking at this from a portfolio perspective, we're doing a lot of the same things that would set you up for success to become $1 billion plus business. But we're looking at it as what's our target to 50x, 100x this business? And then that's kind of part of the exit strategy. And so when you look at that and you step back and look at that across 50 or more businesses, that's your $1 billion business right there. But you're not necessarily putting all your eggs in the same basket and just jeopardizing your end stakeholders, your employees, your buyers, anyone affected by your business. And so, yeah, I mean, overall, I feel like the VC model needs to change, and we're incentivizing the wrong things.
Okay. Yeah, I think that puts more in context. In your website, you say like we are not venture capitalists. We are founders, creators, storytellers, operators, and builders driven by a shared vision and core values.
Yeah, yeah. And we're growing. So we're also not venture capitalists because we're not writing these large checks yet. We're investing, but more on the smaller early stage scale. So that could change, but yeah, I feel really strongly about that. This model doesn't serve all stakeholders.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. I love that. Yeah. And what do you get the opportunity to visit the Amazon jungle when you were in Brazil?
Fortunately not. I was 19 and I just had no I had no flexibility in the bank account to do extra trips.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is like appropriate for this, so feel free to cut this out. But when I went out there, I didn't know anyone in Brazil, and my boss. So when I went out to Brazil, I really didn't know a single person other than the person who recruited me to the job and gave me the offer. And then there was a discrepancy on the contract once I got there, things that I thought were included that weren't. Yeah. So long story short, I had to pretty much find a home in like that day, the first day in Brazil. Terrible Portuguese. I was speaking Portuñol, Spanish, learning a Portuguese accent, learning Portuguese through that. And I ended up meeting a group of 14 guys who are living in a Republica, just an incredible group of human beings, still friends with to this day. But they introduced me to Brazilian culture. So I met them that day. They picked me up. I stayed with them for the rest of the summer. Each weekend was filled with visiting their families in their hometowns. I wasn't like doing a lot of backpacking
But
at that time.
you have backpacked in many places, right? It's a passion of yours.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's the one thing that you can pay for. I'm summarizing. It's one thing you can pay for that makes you richer. It's like you could steal Ben Franklin quote. I never let schooling get in the way of education. So I think travel allows us to grow. It's crucial.
I wanted to really ask you, who should we like? Who do you think is making a good job talking about this framework? Do you have any books or people that we should follow? Because I really want to read more about this, and I feel like I have like business books and I have like environmental books, but there is no one talking about the blend of the space in between those two.
Yeah, great question. Um, I can send you a list after the call, but the first one that comes to mind is um, less focused on venture and more focused just on um, like mindful business practices to me, which is Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard. Have you read it?
No.
It really did change my life. It's when I think I started to see the art and creativity in business. And it's from the founder of Patagonia.
Mm.
Um, they're just a beautiful case study on business and environmentalism and yeah, like defining your bottom line. And he talks, the company talks a lot very openly about how if they were venture backed, they would have had a totally different story. But they are allowed to, they have created their business in a way where profits and proceeds can fund environmental work and social advocacy work. So I just think it's a great kind of playbook. The part I like about it is it breaks down their business into design, distribution, marketing, sales, human resources, culture, things like that. They're one of the first companies to put a child daycare center in an office, actually measuring the impact of productivity and employee retention and things like that. So it changed everything for me. I'm a surfer, so yeah, I gravitate towards it. But what I really like, and I talk about this all the time, is how Yvonne blends this sort of Zen Buddhist approach to design into business, where perfection comes from removing features and not adding them. And I just think that's so important. You see a lot of really fancy products out there today. And are they each one of those features solving pains and problems? So this ties back into the discoveries and needs assessment from earlier in the conversation. But I think that could be applied to everything. We're applying this philosophy to packaging right now. Like every atom on that packaging means something and has a cost to the environment. So how do you remove to have the optimal customer experience at every touch point of your business, from unpackaging to, yeah, of course, your environmental footprint, to the product itself, to what you say on socials and out there and PR. Like it all comes down to less is more to me. So yeah, that was one thing that really stood out. They have a really famous ad campaign that's overused and abused nowadays, but it's "Don't buy this jacket." And I'm sure this is taught in MBA case studies now. Um, but I have to believe that it's actually not just a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
And the underlying message of that was, don't buy a second or a third jacket if you have one. Your jacket should last 40, 50, 100 years. And again, consumers are changing, consumer demand is changing, and purchase decisions rely more and more on our values than any other time in history. So I'm an optimist, and I believe that this is the direction that we're headed. If I could ask every entrepreneur to read one book, I think it would probably be Let My People Go Surfing.
I will definitely give it a read. Have you ever
Yeah, definitely.
read Charles Eisenstein?
No.
Okay, okay. He has a very interesting view about how the economy will need to change. But yeah, for me was a lot of ideas, but I've been lacking the tools. Like, how do I actually create that change? So
Mhm.
I definitely love what you guys are doing in terms of that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're figuring out as we go, um, which is I think what everyone does, right? But um, but it's a different model, and it feels really special. We've had a few aha moments recently where people kind of I get the chills, and people kind of look at each other and go, "We can see this, like we can actually feel this." And they're fewer and far in between when you're doing something different. I don't believe this is completely unique. I think a lot of people are aligned on what we're doing. Um, but at the same time, I think we're early, and it's important to stick to that.
Yeah. Well, I hope it becomes mainstream because it's a great thing.
Yes, yeah. Let's continue this. I really want to hear more about your background and education, and I'm sure you're going to teach me loads that I don't know because I'm a bit of a generalist, so a little bit of everything, but where I struggle is getting into the weeds. So I'd love to learn if you're open to it.
Sure, sure. Uh, so Brad, where can people find more about you and what you are doing right now?
Yeah, it's probably the best place to go is aframeventurestudio.com. Um, Bit of a simplified website for what we're up to. We've got some changes coming. LinkedIn, I'm not as active on the messages there. You can always just email me at bradjaeharris at gmail.com. I refuse to be on Twitter, so I'm not on Twitter. So it's probably the best few places to find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Santiago.
If you enjoyed the show, hit the share button and send it over to one fellow marketer or entrepreneur. We work hard to make sure they'll thank you for it. Also, to get featured on the show, go to valuetizing.com and apply to become our next guest. Until next time, keep valuetizing.